and welcome to today's meeting. My name is Claudio Baldassarre, part of SEMIC Action, and I'll be co-hosting this webinar for you today. I'm really enthusiastic to see how many of you have responded to the invitation. That made it clear that today's topic is of interest of everybody and unites all of us into wanting to understand more. And as you will see by the end of this webinar, we want to do this as a community other than individual effort. This webinar is designed to provide valuable insights from the experience that SEMIC has matured in the last 2 years on researching and implementing tooling so that the changes in data specifications can be systematically propagated to a range of derivative products, covering a range of formats like documentation, HTML, OWL or shuttle model, XSD models, and whatnot. We intend to transfer to you some of our experience, but mostly we look at to open the table for discussions on how what we know and what you have learned individually can be merged so that the best of breeds of practice will emerge on the way forward. We have designed this webinar around core questions that underlie the creation of tooling so that each of us, despite the different implementation applied solution, can relate to the issue at hand. We use each of the questions as a way to introduce SEMIC solution, and you can leave your comments in the chat or in the mural as it will be explained to you later on. We want to make this interactive, so every time you have a comment, make sure that you write it down in the chat so that we can address it one by one when in the second half of the webinar. So I hope you will enjoy the session and follow up what SEMIC is arranging for you after this webinar. And I can mention that all we want is to gather all of you in a collaborative effort. I will now. This was my message that was clear for you to get, and there is now something more generic about the webinar. So some ground rules, as you see in the slide. Keep yourself muted, and when you have questions, we will give the floor for all of you. There will be a question and answering session in the second half of the webinar. As said, you can put in writing your comments into the chat. If you experience any of technical difficulties, you can privately write to Nathan, and he will help you solve anything to make you on board technically. Next slide. The webinar has two sections, as I said. One is the presentations, and the other one it will be addressing your questions. And you can raise your hands in case in the Q&A session you want to intervene, and we'll give you the floor. Next slide. Now, as a main objective to this webinar, I anticipated to you, we are talking here today about what are the requirements and how SEMIC has implemented features to answer those requirements when it comes to the tooling to systematically maintain data specification. We will transfer to you our experience, and we will like to get to know yours. The agenda for the day will be as such: the welcome, it's basically done. Then we'll give you a brief 5 minutes overview on what SEMIC has produced in terms of semantic asset. We'll go through the core, that is the publication process of those assets through the tooling, through the tool chain, and then we'll explain a bit more of how the toolchain came about using the questions. We'll then dedicate full 50 minutes to feedback and interaction, and then wrap up the webinar. So we can move into an overview of what SEMIC has produced in terms of semantic assets. So, okay, so first there is the services that we offer. Okay, as SEMIC, we help producing data specification. So essentially, how do experts transfer those the know-how in their domain into models, into conceptual models that can be used then to drive other models, or essentially be transferred for reuse. We also make pilots. That means we create the opportunity to test our solutions, and we are currently working on Wikidata installation for creation of knowledge graphs. We have LDS solution for core registries. We have the core vocabulary, which is a pillar for SEMIC. And you can find more information on the SEMIC Support Center about what are the ongoing pilots. We offer the toolkit, which is the subject of today, as a service, meaning you can approach us and understand how your data specification can be maintained. You will learn about this more today. And we also have an outreach, or what is now called Knowledge Hub, where we offer all of our experience in the form of learning materials, training and learning materials. More concretely, we have a set of assets which go by the name of core vocabularies. They are very specific and small models that can be reused in several contexts, which is in fact our objective, to produce reference model in as it's for person, or as for what is an agency or a business, so that they can be combined together for different scenarios. We also have application profiles, which are similar asset, only they are an expansion on what can be, for instance, geographic domain or business domain, and all of these are well explained and presented on the SEMIC Support Center. So I invite all of you to have a look and connect to this support center. I think after this, I will hand over the stage, and my colleagues will accompany you through the rest of the webinar. I hope you will enjoy it, and please be active in leaving your comments. We'll make sure to address all of those. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudio. So I will introduce you a bit of the high-level introduction, and then Emilio will give more details about it. And then after that, we will go into the active feedback session. So what is the goal is that we, of course, are building, as Claudio mentioned, data specifications. And if we look to the tooling that has been used over the past 10 years, then there's a lot of different ways and approaches that have been used. In the recent years, more and more effort has been done to standardize and harmonize all this tooling and guidelines around it to get a better quality of the data specifications. And so this is the topic of the outcome of what we stand today, what we want to share, and so that everybody can learn, and then we can see how to go forward on it. And the goal, of course, is that by looking to this tooling and so on, that's what we can improve and what we can learn forward. Okay, Nathan, next slide. If we look in today into it, then what we have is that we are growing our quality of our systemic assets. And to do that, we need tools to do that, but we need as well tools to ensure coherency over all these semantic assets. So if you have different core vocabularies, then you want to offer a similar experience from one core vocabulary to another, and this then even crossing over the application profiles. But that is not only our goal. Our goal is as well to interact with you and to see how we can streamline the expectations, not only within SEMIC, but across and towards the member states, so that this becomes an interconnected network of specifications, and so that everybody can take benefit of each other. And of course, in this step towards member states, it's one step to a larger one. If we take the perspective of the data spaces, it's even larger and broader. And then in order to satisfy and to support on that level, it's good to exchange on what are guidelines and what are tooling around to make that smooth working. Okay, in the next slide. So as you already know, many of you already attended a first webinar on the style guide, where we focused ourselves on what are, let's say, the guidelines, the agreements that we would make to build the data specifications independent of the tooling. Today, we take a focus shift towards what is tooling aiding us. So suppose we have guidelines and agreements as being discussed in the previous webinar. What can we do to make then editorial effort even smoother and so on? So that's the goal on that. Okay, next slide. To get a bit more feeling on what's happening, now a more technical, operational, editorial perspective on what is a data specification. So it's not a content-wise, but it's more what happens when we build our data specifications. And as many of us know, so we have working groups around our core vocabularies and our application profiles. And in that, for those data specifications, we look for use cases, we look for the information that is needed to build up the data models behind, the conceptual models behind that in the data specification. And for that, we need tooling and to build this to express that. And using that tooling, we publish first a draft. So this is a first, typically in the process, we need to be able in our tooling to publish draft states so that we can communicate with working groups on the current state of affairs, and so that we have a good exchange. And during a certain period, of course, we do reviews, we get feedback, we need a mechanism to capture this feedback. And for that, of course, that leads then to the adjustments, adaptations of these models. And in the end, if we circle around and have captured sufficient feedback, we reach a good quality data model that we will or can be able to publish. And then when we publish, of course, there are a number of quality expectations that we have. For instance, persistent identifiers, be able to read it in HTML or machine readable format, etc. And there are certain these expectations. So we want to connect as well in the tooling that the effort that we do while building this data specification, we get the expected outputs and so on. So this is the whole flow of the data specification on a high level, on the aspect where we have a number of needs that already appear on this. If we go to the next slide, then there are a number of other perspectives that you can look at it as well. So it's not a single user action only. We have many people involved into it, and as well, sometimes people change from role. We want to introduce new people, so we want to automatize and scale up in a way that we can serve more data specifications being created, and as well that people and the group of editors that facilitate into it get tooling that create in a quality way the data specifications. And for that, you want to automatize. And so that's the reason why you want to automate the whole process. And of course, in order to get to there, we need to agree on what are the best practices. And that's part of the style guide that we have. But as well, there are some publishing or technical practices and tooling practices that can emerge and are needed in order to realize this. And finally, of course, there's a bit towards what we want to offer to go to a community of users of the data specifications. What do they want, how they want to experience it, and how we can facilitate that with the right tooling, the right technical way of sharing that. So that's the perspective of the user experience, what the user wants to see and wants to get. And of course, this is interlocked with each other, and that is an element that we're going to discuss today. So I provide then the word to hand over the word to Emilio, who will give you more details about what's today's SEMIC publication process, the toolchain that is being used.
Yes. Thank you, Bert. Indeed, within the SEMIC publication process, the toolchain follows a certain key principles that you see illustrated in this slide. We identified 6 of them. They are quite related to each other. And you see over here, we talk about facilitating collaboration, because when you publish a specification, you might have multiple editors that they have to work together. Transparency. When we deal with changes, evolution of your specification, you need to deal also with the transparency of the changes, what happened between one release and another. Accessibility, because you would like to access, and how you would like to access it, that's another also story. Different type of artifacts generated from your publication process. Easy to reuse, the possibility for and not only for users of the editor, let's say, of the specification, but also people that would like to reuse, integrate in their data model. So that's also something to be looked into, together also with versioning and consistency. Versioning, we already mentioned about the fact that there are changes, so you need to keep track of the changes, but also consistency, because if you generate different artifacts out of your publication process, you need to make sure that all the artifacts are consistent between each other. So within the next slides, we see how we dealt so far with this, let's say, respective principles. Yeah, for example, in this slide here, we merge collaboration and transparency. We had to deal with multiple editors. We manage different specifications. Also, editors can do mistakes that should be addressed, of course, and fixed during release. And until now, we have been using GitHub as a collaboration system. GitHub, because it's a platform that allows us for multiple editors to access the same models, to access also all the kind of metadata that we use, all kind of styling that we need to apply for the data specifications. So in this sense, GitHub also offer a platform to track changes, to track who made let's say, the change and why did it, and also make it also with you, with the member states in general, to collect feedback and issues, because thanks also to the community that it's around let's say the specifications, we get also feedback and issues that we can fix within the next release. So within the next slides, for example, we see also how we deal with the ease of reuse. In that sense, we focus on 2 main aspects. Of course, we can even improve it. One is how we deal with the formats of our specification. We manage, you see the data specification, they are published in HTML format. But when we deal with the data model, data models are expressed into RDF as a semantic, let's say, standard for us to express the data model, but also with UML, because UML is, as if somebody of you already attended also the SEMIC style guide. For us, the UML is the main part of the process, the publication process. So it's a way to express not, let's say, a technical level, but more, I would say, more at business level, the data model that can be exchanged with different stakeholders. There are, of course, pros and cons, because RDF might be technical for certain type of editors. For other editors might prefer to work in UML. That's, of course, a balance that we need to, of course, look at it. If we look at the next slide, we look at the consistency. The toolchain that we so far, it helps us to sustain consistency. As I said, when you generate different artifacts, and you will see also within the next slide soon, you need to make sure that all the artifacts are consistent between each other. An example, if I have to generate a description for a term, this description, of course, might appear in different other artifacts. So you need to keep maintaining this. And for us, the way to do, first of all, the work was to start from UML. And from the UML, we generate different type of artifacts. So the UML representation serves as a source of truth. We can see also in the next slide how it happens. You see here in the image that our editorial process starts with the UML diagram, which is just there on the right. Out of this editorial process, we generate different type of artifacts. First of all, the one that most people see is the HTML for user documentation. Then we have other type of artifacts which are more for, let's say, on the semantic level. You have the RDF representation of the data model, JSON-LD context, which helps to add semantic interoperability into a REST API, which most of the time are expressed in JSON. So thanks to JSON-LD context, you can reach and provide semantic interoperability on top. And shackle shapes that helps to validate against the data model. So they are all related between each other, because even, as I said, the description, but even the single URI has to be spread all around different type of artifacts that you see here. So within the next slides, we see also versioning. I mentioned already part of it, and thanks to Git and also in a way GitHub for this, we applied Git for version control for different ways, either to fork the project, because people can even fork it and create their own data model, but also for us to also provide releases. You see that we start to provide releases into GitHub on the right-hand side of the home page, so people can access to the latest release exactly of each single core vocabularies. So version control is expressed to that, thanks to that. Then the last one, accessibility, on the next slide. The idea is to access in a seamless, easy way, I would say, the releases in different way. We input in different folders, because certain people maybe are not used how Git or GitHub works. So it's better to put releases in certain folders over there. But you can have the single releases on the right-hand side on GitHub, where you can download them. And then you have the readable artifacts. You're talking about accessibility in terms of HTML. Of course, we prefer open, let's say, standards in that sense for easy navigation, in this case, HTML, but also different artifacts from different needs. If I want to validate, I use shackle. If I want to express as I said, I want to enrich some REST API, I could use JSON-LD context. And then the toolchain, until now, it's let's say artifacts are generated in English, but the toolchain allows us also to produce artifacts in multiple languages. If we need to, of course, we will need to look for each single term to apply this. Last but not least, I would say the persistent URI, the referenceability. The effort that we bring in is also make sure that each single term is uniquely represented by a persistent URI, that can be dereferenced. So each single URI corresponds exactly one term only. To generate a doc no. I see that I read just the email, the message from Svein Olsen. We are aware that some people look at ASCII doc. HTML is definitely, I think, the best way to reach out people on the browser. ASCII doc, I consider it is mostly an intermediary format, but we can discuss about this. It's in the next within the next part. And then one last slide about the SEMIC toolchain. You see on the starting from the left hand side, our process starts with the adding of the data model. The data model which is expressed inside the UML. After that, when we want to do a release, we need to update also the metadata around this model. If the status, for example, pass from draft to recommendation, we need to update the status metadata. Also the release date, but also who are the authors and editor that contribute to this specification. Then it's up to the SEMIC toolchain to generate the artifacts from this UML model, which is enriched with different type of metadata. And at the third point, we evaluate if the specification is good enough or not. If we see still that there are errors generated, we go back and we start either from the UML or either from the metadata, maybe because we insert wrongly the metadata, see if then the release can be effectively published in a public repository. So each single release goes on, let's say, if I talk about core person, goes to respective repository, or core person repository, or core location repository. When we publish the release, we also publish a changelog there where we explain what are the changes applied to such specification. This is in parallel. We also manage persistent URI, because if there is a change in a URI, we need to apply, and we start this from the enriched UML diagram. And you see also that in the latest part, the public access comes when we publish the public repository. So this is what you at the end user sees. So when it's finally published on the let's say on each single repository. But the work starts indeed from the UML diagram that we enriched from the beginning. And on this side, I finished. I see also Costas and Georgia commenting on ASCII doc and the model used for metadata of the data model. It depends. For the metadata data model, it depends. If we talk about just the pure metadata, there is just a configuration file for this. If we talk about the let's say the enrichment of the UML of the let's say the URI or the description of each single term, this goes directly inside the UML model.
No, I meant actually the metadata, descriptive metadata level. Yeah. Okay, so. Yeah, I was writing that in Italy we are using that, by the way, enables also the use of this model and harvesting in our national data catalog of data models or ontologies. Okay, we use ADMS AP that we extended in Italy in order to capture in the model specific metadata of data models. Like, for example, in the ontology world, you may have the prefix, the preferred prefix to call the ontology, and we extended the ADMS AP.
Georgia, Emilio, can we continue with the flow presentation? It's because other people have made comments and we leave it for the feedback. So we don't break the flow.
Of course.
Yes, thank you.
Don't worry.
No problem. We will discuss. I leave the floor. I leave the floor on this side, on let's say on the discussion around the community. So we have the Nathan. You can introduce.
Yes.
Indeed. You can go ahead.
So thanks everyone. Yeah, so far for the presentations. Also, indeed, as we said, we will have enough time to take your comments that are very valuable, of course. So in this part, we would like to have some more members of the community share some of their experiences, some of their best practices, or other insights in tooling for the data specification lifecycle. And for the next 10 to 15 minutes, we'll have a presentation and demo by the Finnish team. So Rita, feel free to share your screen if that's fine. And then the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Let's see if I can find the right screen, but yes, now you should see
Yes.
our data vocabulary tool. Yes, thank you for the opportunity to come here and present our tool. And I'm, as said, Riitta Alkula, and I'm from the Finnish Digital Agency. So that our mission is to promote digitalization for society. So this is in the core in that sense that we try to make some toolings to help that. And now you see the contents of our interoperability platform. So that the data vocabularies, which is today the topic, is only one of our tools, but I think that most important one. The idea is that our toolset is based on linked data principles, so that there are internally they are RDF triples, and from those triples we can generate different kind of outputs, whatever needed. Currently there are about almost 300 data models on our platform. There are about 50 domain models, so that they are the general models that are used to be a basis of the application profiles. So that the application profiles, of course, are more context-specific data models. Reference data is used to maintain code lists. So, for example, if we have an attribute and we have some values, then they are in that code set list what is maintained in reference data. And then we also have a terminologies tool that contains terminological concepts, so that the idea is that there are actually what are the words and what are the meanings of the concepts we do, but data vocabularies are more like logical, let's say conceptual data model and logical data model. And the data vocabulary tool is like this. It has UML-like visualization. The idea is that we describe different kind of classes and their attributes and associations on this left-hand side, and then the tool creates on the right-hand side the visualization of those contents. And the idea is also that the user does not need to know anything about, let's say, modeling contents, so that the basic user can only think about the logical relations between the classes and so on. But now I change and try to make a live demo. Let's see if that will be okay. But first of all, I will let's see if I can get right. All right, I get one of the, but let's see. Sorry about these technical issues, but now you should see one of the of the first screen of the front page of our tool. And on the left-hand side, there are domains so that you can search data models so that they can be any of you can, there are about 300 data models, and you can restrict the search by using some ideas like what organizations or what kind of contents there are and so on. And there on the right hand side, you can see that there is add model because I am now as an editor, so I can see that, but the normal users don't see that kind of thing. Then I try to search one data model, and I made a data model beforehand so that now we have here an empty data model, so that there are data model details descriptions of that data model, and if I would like to have more detailed documentation, I could add information on that page too. But now I can see then add a class to the data model, and the idea is that our tool gives some earlier classes so that I don't have to do everything from scratch, but I can, for example, if I want to add person class to my data model, then I can first browse if there are any other classes that I can use. And for example, now I take this person class, and because I'm now doing an application profile, I say that I specialize that so that I can use that. And here I can see list of attributes that there are already in that data component, but I want to make some kind of different selections. For example, I take only few of the attributes, and that's all. So now I have selected attributes I want, and then say yes and save, so that you can see that on the right hand side there comes that class and with the attributes that there I selected. And if I want to add another class, then the procedure is similar, so that I can add, for example, organization, and see also that there are already very promising classes done already, so that I can take another and use that also. And I don't want anything from that, so that I can create something by my own. For example, I can then take that organization class and add the attributes when I say edit, and then add the attribute or association. And for example, if there is some already possible attributes that I can use. Sorry that the network has been somewhat slowish today, but let's see. Yes, now I have an attribute there, and I can take that to my data model, to this class, and say that, okay, save. And then the attribute comes to that also. Can be seen also on that visualization. Then about associations, if I want to add an association between those two classes, then I go to the class that a class that is the source of that. So that it go attribute or association, and then association is and so I'm now searching, or the system is now searching if there is any predefined relation that I could use in this case. Okay, and now it shows that it has something, and I think that, okay, this is a very good relation and association, so I take this. And here it brings the information of that association to my data model. And then because there is this association, I also I want to connect it to another class. And for example, here we have only two classes, so there is not so much to select, but in this case, anyway, you can see the process, and then you save, and then all the relation has become visible to this very small data model. But the idea is that I can create information via this section in the middle, and then create the information, and the tool shows the visualization. And also, if I want to see, for example, technical formats like RDF, XML, or so on, so I can then ask for tool to show those information for me, so that I don't have to make any of the conversions by myself. I just click a button, and then the system provides that kind of export format that I want, so that there are several formats. Yes, but this is about our tool demo. I now can, if you have something to ask, or if that comes to the part when we are discuss more in more detail about the system. For example, our process is very easy in that sense that we get permission to the editors, and then they create models, and models are always up to date, so that we don't have to make that kind of rollback. In that sense, it all is in this same tool. Yes.
Thanks a lot, Rita. Does anybody have any questions for Rita on this presentation and demo? There's a question from Matthias in the chat. He asks if you create a specification view as well.
Specification. What do you mean by this specification view?
So like the other case with you have what we have been presented before, there is a focus of a specification with like UML view perhaps, and also a long list of all the classes and properties including, and I think I saw something similar inside of the tool, but do you have some kind of idea of presenting that as a separate web page, a pure specification view?
Yes, I think that those technical formats I tried to show you, but it seems that it didn't came through. Let me see if you can see it. But anyway, yes, we do have those specifications, and you can either download it or look it and on the web page. but let's see if I can get that out of. So you mean this kind of export or specification?
That is nice, but I meant like a HTML specification in the end.
Ah, you made HTML.
Yes.
No. Currently, we do not support HTML output. We could do that kind of thing, but anyway, I don't. Currently, our users haven't been interested in that kind of presentation.
Okay. Can you define properties independent of the classes?
Yes. The idea is that these RDF and its the attributes and associations are, so to say, flowing in the space, so that I can take any attribute to any class if I want to.
That's an interesting thing. I would suggest to compare with the other presentation we heard before, whether it's possible. Maybe if someone could answer if that is possible to define this kind of list of properties in a way which makes sense, or how would that work in Enterprise Architect?
I'll just shortly answer this one. What happens here is that you have to define what is, let's say, the broad domain and range to associate with it. So and then you can create a list of those properties. So we have a notion of a vocabulary that you can use, and then you present and you print this list. That's what happens. But you have still to associate it in the URL view to a broad class or thing or RDF resource or something like that if you want to manage it independently. That's
Okay. Thank you.
The technical way you have to attach it to that.
Yes, and I like to add that our classes have URI addresses, but of course also our attributes and associations have their own URIs, so that we can uniquely identify those. Any other questions? I just put our content creation and editing process on the screen so that you can see that what kind of phases there are. But as said, everything is done within the same tool.
So Kuldar also replied in the chat. Kuldar, I believe this is not related to the previous conversation in the chat, but he says as a vision, DCAT, for example, DCAT AP is maintained in such a way I can use the same environment, reuse DCAT, add further details for DCAT AP, and then a custom extension, in this case EE. So I believe indeed that's the vision. Rita, if you have anything to add there, or Bert.
Well, actually, yes, we have currently also making DCAT AP as described in our system, but I think that the vision is very like the same, that if you have something and it's in a structured format, so that you have the all the data in fields, and then so I think that you can put everything around those contents. So that I think that would be, yes, very, very possible way to use this kind of system.
Is this clear, Kuldar? Okay, well, thanks a lot, Rita. I think this can definitely serve as inspiration for our next discussions that will follow, and it's very interesting to see your perspective and the hard work you've done on this. So if there are no further questions for the Finnish team, I would suggest that Claudio, you take over again for a similar use case, but then for the Norwegian team, now unfortunately Jim Young from the Norwegian team could not join us today, so we will briefly show you what he enlightened us with during previous discussions. So Claudio, I believe the floor is yours. Might be on mute. I'm not.
Yes. Thank you. So so I leave the slides for participants to read. I will just take this opportunity to highlight what has come out from the bilaterals we've had with member states. The fact that there are clear requirements that are emerging, and there is a level of automations that is requested. So lots of these workflows, they require changing between different formats, and obviously when something is updated at the source, this changing is to be propagated. So as the more the manual effort, that will create lots of intervention. Another requirement that another issue that has emerged is that the environment where the modeling happens is not the environment where the maintenance is happening, because the source models are different, and when the model that reconciles all this information is edited in a dedicated environment. So the reconsolidation of these two spaces will certainly help. Another issue is the output formats. Talking with Peter from Daimler, they told us they are serving the public sector at large, and all of the units in the public sector or services, they are familiar with a certain particular format. So the range of artifacts that have to be produced from a reference model has to be large. So more issues is the presence of a catalog. So the idea that what the community is working on, or what is being already published, has to be visible to everybody, so that anybody who wants to start a new modeling exercise, they wouldn't start from scratch, but mostly build on the existing effort. I can mention one more request or issue is the collaboration aspect. We typically enable collaborations within the team, but in a community, we would like to enable collaboration not necessarily on the final products. That means, say, from SEMIC sides, there is vocabularies that are modeled and then are promoted to reuse. We would like to enable this level of collaboration during the modeling exercise, so that more experts from the member states will give their input and influence the output, so that less alignment is needed. All of these issues have come out from talking with you, and I hope that even more can be shared as we collect feedback during the meeting and afterwards. So again, another invitation to whoever wants to influence the future of a tool chain, of a community tool chain, to be engaged. We will make sure that all of you are heard, and we come up with a solution that covers all issues. If we move to the next slide, that's where again SEMIC has made its experience, and today you have been exposed to the experience for what is our interpretation. But we can already see some shortcoming to this already internally. That is operating a tool chain like the kind we have made requires a large set of skills and tools beyond being an expert of beyond being a domain expert on the specification itself, which decreases a bit the autonomy of operating the tool chain. That means an operator of the tool chain, like Rita, for instance, has shown us, should be able to have the necessary knowledge to maybe create as an HTML documentation, or inputting some requests for changes without necessarily be super technical. Another issue that we have identified internally is that there is a request for intense coordination of steps to propagate model updates, and sometimes for small changes this doesn't really pay off on the effort that is requested for a minimal change. And last but not least is that we are using licensing software, and as many times has been highlighted, this is not everyone's option, especially in the public sector. So how we can turn some of these for the future. Now, obviously, we would like to have a tool chain that is operated as a web application. So like the kind that Rita has shown us. And then expose also the operation on the model that are a large range of operations you can do. You can upload, you can browse, you can search, you can generate different artifacts. So this has been shown already, but from Finland, but obviously we would like to bring it to a larger audience. Another point is from the set of outputs that we want to make available. So they can be the diagrams, different diagrams, maybe the UML, maybe others, different serialization of the same representation language. So we have seen the many that RDF can have, JSON LD, Turtle, it can be RDF XML, you name it. But also models that are not RDF, or that can be, well, they can be RDF, they can be OWL, they can be SHACL, but not RDF. Also XSD, and anything that we can collect as a new format. Like for instance, object-oriented binding. Someone would like to make Java classes starting from the model. So essentially, we are inviting you to be part of as a community, to formulate how the tool chain of the future should look like. Now, one issue that we have had so far is, if you can move to the next slide, is that SEMIC is adopting UML as the reference description of a data specification. So there is a single input. So on the left you would see that if the blue box represents all of the operation that the tool chain could do, and that can be pipelined into in fact a chain of components. But the input model is UML. We would like to know, for instance, whether for you it would make a null format or a SHACL, and have an interface to agnostic to which would be made agnostic to which model is an input, but can always perform certain operation. So this, for instance, for us would be key to know in order to support the community at large. We can collect. Now we are halfway into the meeting, and so we should leave space for feedback And I think what I've presented to you and my colleagues have presented to you makes enough for us to drive the discussion for the next 50 minutes. So I will give back the floor to Nathan so that he can introduce to you how the feedback will be collected and the conversation be conducted.
Yep, thank you, Claudio. Maybe before we move to the mural, it would be good to address some of the questions in the chat because there have been quite a few. Of course, yeah. In the beginning of the webinar, a few people commented indeed on the use of UML as a starting point, and then more specifically also the specific tooling in order to interact with this UML. Perhaps now is a good time, Bert or Remigio, if you want to address some of these questions yeah, verbally instead of the chat, it will be easier. Does that work?
Okay. So I think here on the tooling side, on the UML tooling, I think there's a question that resides: is Enterprise Architect the only UML tool to be used, or are there alternatives to be present available? And I think this is an underlying question that often is raised. In there is one element that we have to, if we look to UML as a language, many of the tools that offer UML as a language are just drawing tools. They do not store information behind it. You just get an arrow in a particular structure and that's it. You can have not the metadata. You can actually don't retrieve from the information whether this arrow is an association or a subclass. It is just the arrow. So it's very hard to deal with. So you have to exclude all tools that are just drawing tools from the perspective first. So that leaves that it brings into the game all the UML tools that actually store and maintain the information as an information structure. And Enterprise Architect is one of them, but there are others as well. So can they be used? Yes, they could be used. And for that, what needs to be done is, of course, to look and to explore that information model. And what is then, it comes to the connection to the question that Matthias asked, what are the critical information that we need in order to manage it and to deal, is that we should be able to describe in a common way the critical information that we need to do the matching with our semantic models. This is the tagging and so on. And what is critical, we need to be able to express what is the URI of the concept. If you have a class or a property, an association, you have to be able to identify the URI to make a process to make the URI. And associated with that, then the labels and the definitions that are associated with that. So that is the key conceptual information we want to store, associated and tightly connected with the diagram. So any UML tool that is capable of supporting that is a good candidate. And so then it comes to building up a community among us to say we want to invest as well in this tool or that tool besides Enterprise Architect. If everybody around the table says I would like to have another tool, but I'm not wanting to invest into it, yeah, then it's a bit of hard. It's a bit of effort we do, and nobody is going to take the outcome. So we need then people to step up and say, okay, we're going to take the output and to work with it. So that would be a question towards the community: which tool you are willing to adopt, to continue further on, and to put efforts into it as an alternative enterprise architect that we can build upon. If there are other alternatives out there that we would like and that you would like to see, then and have experience with, that would be great. Because otherwise we might end up in the same discussion later with that tool. So it's better than to select one that the community has. So is this clear? I think as a setting of the question of the UML tool itself. Yeah, I think.
And further requirements that come forward from the audience can definitely be captured in the mural that we will move to in a second.
Yeah.
But thanks for this, Bert. Yeah. And we also, if you remember from the start, had a question from, I think it was from Georgia, on the metadata.
It's maybe a good one, yeah. So on the metadata, there are two levels of, maybe three levels of metadata that we can consider. One is an aspect that has been raised already during the style guide webinar, is what are the, let's say, the critical information we want to collect and describe for the specifications themselves. And so what we want to know, what is it there that we minimally want, and which model we want to put behind. And it can be this semantic specification like ADMS. That's one of the elements in it. The other thing into it is that it's good to consider that we have a transparency and a connection of the tooling with the artifacts that are being produced, so that you can provide to the readers, this is built upon these changes and these specific adaptations the editors have done, so that you can, for instance, refer to the commit in the GitHub repository, and that you connect all these things. So this is an additional versioning and metadata that you could that we could benefit from.
Okay, thank you, Bert. I hope that's clear, Georgia. Okay, but maybe we can move forward to the mural indeed. So Emil, if you would go to the mural board itself. So probably a lot of you have already worked with Mural in the past. It is basically a collaboration tool that will allow us and the group here today to provide inputs yourself and create post-its, create notes to express your ideas to us, and then we can go over these post-its and discuss, basically have an open discussion. I will post the link to access the mural in the chat. So definitely let me know if you have any issues joining this, then we can look into that. But essentially, if we move, yeah, you can see it on the screen already where Emil is pointing to the top, there is a little introduction to get used to the tool and to also get an idea of who is in the call here. So I would like to invite everyone, as soon as you have joined, to create a post-it, which you can do by double-clicking on any area. There are some more detailed instructions on the left. And post your name and your organization. That would also be very useful so that we can get an overview of who is here. Feel free to also later in the feedback sessions to also post your name on the post-it so that we know where the input is coming from. It's always convenient. So I see a lot of people joining. Does anybody have issues with this? So we'll give 1 or 2 more minutes to do this.
One question, Nathan. Will the mural be available also after the meeting, or will be still open?
Yeah, so the link, you can always access the link again, but of course, it's not guaranteed that this will be available for years to come, let's say, because we're dependent on the tool. But in the documentation that we will share after the webinar, so the meeting minutes, the recording, we will also be able to share screenshots of the mural. And of course, the recording will be available for everybody, so you can also look into that and see what input was posted. Okay, so thank you everyone for this. I see some more being added, but in the meantime, we can move forward maybe to the main feedback exercise, let's say, where a first question would be, Emil, indeed, if you could move down a bit, is simply to ask about your interest in adopting tooling, a tool chain, offered by SEMIC, and also to which degree you would like to do this. So this will give everybody an idea of which support can be provided in which way, and where the governance is, and who can support this, offer this support. So you can definitely add some notes on whether or not you would be interested in adopting such a tool chain, or any other issues you've encountered, for example, in the data specification lifecycle, and how Toolchain or tooling could solve these issues for you. I see some being added there too, so thank you for that.
Just jumping in on this, SEMIC, when you understand the SEMIC toolchain is really the community toolchain, something that is contributed by everybody. Obviously, SEMIC is interested in coordinating all of everybody's effort, but it's something that everybody can influence from the start. So
Yeah, so let's give 3 to 4 minutes, or how much time you need basically to add some of the notes, and then afterwards we'll go over the notes and open up the discussion.
So Costas, I have seen, I'm reading your comment. Make sure that this is in the mural so it stays with comments from the others. It's a general comment that I will make also. This mural exercise, we consider it as the beginning of consolidated community requirements for the toolchain. So we will compile this into the first draft of requirement and circulate the requirements and make sure that these requirements are constantly updated up to when, possibly in June, we will call the community in group of experts around a certain theme for the toolchain and engage with these groups that can drive the development. So this is an exercise that will be projected to the future.
Okay, I see a lot of comments, so thank you everybody for that input. We can maybe start looking into a few of them. If we start on the bottom, on the top left, there is a comment, as long as it is open source and can be integrated with existing systems. So indeed, that's already two requirements that would, well, the toolchain need to satisfy. Open source and easily, yeah, easy to integrate. Do other people have other opinions on this? You can always put a +1 in the chat, for example, if you think this is a good idea, or add a post-it next to that one with further details to see if everybody or if this requirement is a wider requirement and translates to other people too. So no further comments on the open source character, or if the original poster can add something.
Yeah, it's me. It's me. I'm Alberto Abella from Firewall Foundation. I cannot attend all the webinars, but my interest is that this tool could be somehow, because there are parts which are very interesting for us and some parts which we have an alternative solution. And we would like to take advantage of the parts that can be useful for us.
Yes, thank you, Alberto. Thank you for that valuable feedback. Indeed. Okay.
And if I can comment on this, Alberto, is obviously, as I said at the beginning, we would like that the best of breeds of practice will emerge from this. So there will be some in the community which will take complements to what they have, but they can also offer what is their solution, so that it can be proposed as a reference solution for the community. So it's obviously an exchange. So we invite everybody, also those who have implemented a solution like Finland, to participate, because their experience as well as our experience and everybody's experience is valuable. It will save us some work on the way forward if everybody puts on the table what they've learned.
Yes, Alberto?
No, I have so, but I guess I need just more than just a comment here for introducing what we have already working in the smart data models. So we are somehow providing something which is slightly different because it's agile standardization. We don't pay much or show a strong attention to some points that you make here about regarding ontologies. And we are quite strictly practical documenting, which is already working on the on the market or in emerging projects. So I guess that I would like to, in coming sessions, if we can share this approach, maybe it could be valuable for somebody else, because as we everything we do is open source, so therefore can be used by others.
Matthias here. I'm doing a pre-study on behalf of the Swedish Digitization Agency, looking into various tools for like a central handling of data models. So I've done quite a lot of reading lately, and maybe there is some interest to share some of the conclusions. Unfortunately, it's in Swedish, yeah, right, up to now. But I also looked into quite a few tools and trying to look into various approaches to handle the whole workflow from a lot of municipalities and agencies to produce data models that will become into a central hub of data models. Tieto-Mallet is one of those that I've looked at. I've looked at Oslo Framework. I've looked at Enterscape Models, which is one of those that I'm involved in as well. Yes, so feel free to. I'm happy to present something at a later point when we come further with this.
Thanks. So following up on the latest comments, so what we see feasible is that once these requirements, or the first draft of requirements are compiled, we can publish them, and those who, like Alberto or Rita, have a solution, they can tell us how much the requirements overlap with what they are doing. So that's already a measure of the work of the integration or best of picking components. How difficult or easy the work is. So publishing set of requirements for those who have provided a solution, it's a starter of conversation. And for those who don't have a solution, then obviously follow closely, because if you input your requirements, then it's very highly, it's very possible, and we work for that your request is satisfied in the future toolchain. So you see how this is two ways job. Includes everybody, those who have a solution and those who don't have a solution. Everybody has a voice. Nathan, so now it's 30 minutes to the end. Should we comment on the items in the mural?
Yes, for sure.
At the same time, the people, yeah.
Yeah, because we also have a comment on the left of the first exercise, asking on the current availability of a toolchain and how that would work. So maybe Bert, can you give a small comment on this? I also posted a link in the chat linking to the manual that describes the toolchain and how it can be used.
Okay, so on that, what happens is that today it is a GitHub-based process. And so in the toolchain manual, you will find it several steps, use cases to it. But when you set it up, it is based on GitHub-based. So it's first GitHub that you need, and then you have to do this, configure a number of repositories to it. And it consists of 2 layers. The first layer is the layer of the data specification itself. So we store in a single repository all the information that is related to the specification. That's the master source of that specification. And then we have what is called a publication environment, which consists of a description of the thing that has to be transformed and executed and to the result, and that's a generated repository. And in the generated repository, there are a number of automation of Circle CI. So CI/CD scripts is being defined, and that will read the source specification of each data specification, convert it, apply the transformations, and you get the results in another repository. And from there on, you can do publication, do things with it, etc. So the goal is that everything is automated and scaled through this automation, through this CI/CD. That's the base principle of it. As already mentioned, and you already heard, the key, let's say, commercial element into it is enterprise sparks. So today it is the let's say, maybe for some of people, the blocking factor, but all the rest is essentially open source, open, free of freemium usage of resources, and you could use it out of the box. Of course, there are some typical choices that you have to make. So you have your HTML pages that are being generated. Then you have to question yourself, is this according to the style and look and feel that you would like to have? And then you come into all these adaptations that you have to do according to look and feel of that level. That's in short. Of course, that's not a demo. From the Toolchain, there's another document on the documentation where there are several use cases. A demonstration is with small videos that are can be shared, can be viewed. So this is all available on that. But of course, this is during. I have a question, and there's a few elements into it on the enterprise architect on the commercial. I think, what is the level of commercial blocking thing? Because, for instance, if you want to publish your HTML, you have to use a commercial possible tooling too. You might have to set up a virtual machine with a proxy and to do the rendering and so on. Is that considered commercial costs to the toolkit or not? I mean, the problem is maybe we're focusing here on this editorial single input tool, but there are in the whole toolkit, in the whole publishing of the style of the data specifications, there's much more activity ongoing. If you want to have persistent URIs, you need to handle the namespace and the domain. You cannot have you cannot have that. So it's maybe not mentioned too much there, but that's a cost that you have into tooling as well, and which is intrinsic to the choice of the namespace.
A comment here from Matthias. So clearly, tagged values should be something that is possible to support in other tools. Have you investigated, are there other UML tools that have support for tagged values? And if they have export to XMI, which I would see highly likely, then just refocusing the converter based on XMI would be a potential way forward to avoid the lock-in to Sparks EA.
Yes, that's what we unfortunately we did an investigation a few years back. It's not up to date. Then all the tools, UML tools that offered free access and would offer tagging were not offering the tagging in the free basis, but in the commercial basis. So it would replacing one commercial tool with another commercial tool. That was not the benefit of it. So that is an experience we have. We didn't look too recently to it yet. So that might be good that we reassess the current list again. So the list was 3 years back, something like this.
There are also open source UML tools that even potentially could be expanded just in this direction to support this.
Yes, indeed. That could be another investment. Like yeah, Claudio.
Svein, yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, I tried to raise my hand for a while now, but seems like I was just first question the survey that was done. Have you added that to this? And I thinking a little bit the discussion of tooling is and chain is difficult because we have had a chain back from 2001, and there is always challenge what's open source and what's been developed in tools. So now we're using one tool halfway and this, and on a Monday we use another tool, and it's almost impossible to write that chain up in a good way. I definitely would recommend that we are kind of defining the type of application that we are needed in the chain and kind of come to an agreement what is kind of needed here. And then people can add what is the tool they're using for each of these type of application or application function, if we're going to be like kind of Archimate type of terms. And then looking at what should be invested to move forward, because obviously there's a challenge for us to compete where we already have fairly good coverage, but where we don't have anything, then that's a big area where we're reusing other people's work. So I think that will be, really good for how we are moving things forward based on where we currently are.
So Svein, thanks, because that gives me the opportunity to comment and ask the participants, how do you feel if the tool chain was a container of executable components that you can plug in with connectors that interface those components, and on the one end, and the other end interface your source model, whatever that is.
I'm starting first to answer for me. I think that's an excellent idea, and these are where you have a tool change and when you can put that out, because like we're using Sparks, we have actually worked with Sparks to have quite a few export. We do have like an export of RDF. However, that's not necessarily up to date, but we can have way, and then that becomes input to the other tool chain.
Thanks. Yeah. So in that respect, so I guess coming back to that slides where there was on one side on the left there was a tool chain as an execution engine for just UML, and then on the right opening that up to multiple format that would be plugged with connectors to the tool chain. Then I get the feeling, at least from Spain, that would be a good approach. But if anybody else, whether in the chat or via the microphone, could give us an idea whether a toolchain of pluggable components and execution components is something that can speed up adoption.
So a comment, what you're asking for is a tool chain that assumes that the information is in a foreign format. What Rita showed earlier with Titomalit, and there are also other options like Enterscape, which work natively with RDF.
Yes.
and that expressions. So the question is,
Yes.
what role does the toolchain have in that kind of scenario? I'm not sure. Maybe the toolchain should be considered into various smaller aspects. How do you transform RDF schema into a shackle, simple
Exactly.
shackle version? Is that one thing?
Yes.
How do you generate the specification from that together with some?
Yes.
So
Yes.
you should probably need to divide that up into even smaller parts, which I think you already
Yes.
did to some extent, but
Yes. That's the intuition. If we are able to break the tool chain into the components that execute certain tasks, and then these components can be pipelined, we still have a behavior of a tool chain that is customizable to one's need. And we will, and my best wish would be to open this tool for multiple inputs. Yeah. I mean, obviously there is a very clear groups that use UML and then those who use RDF, right? But we want to be as possible as interoperable as possible. You see. Then slowly, maybe we can see that the community is leaning to one or the other. It depends, but that's the idea.
Excuse me, I'd like to jump in. I've been raising my hand for 15 minutes now, and I thought I'd just grab the mic. I just wanted to comment on what's being discussed now about the toolchain. Well, I also agree that the toolchain is best seen as individual building blocks that could be employed independently and not as an overarching big, let's say, multi-step process, because any experience we have had from the interoperability testbed side at Digit, it has always been negative if there is something very big to apply in an existing organization and an existing process. If this can be split up into individual parts, it's going to make it a lot easier to adopt. That's one comment I had. And I just want to mention something else, because I hear a lot of discussion about automation and CI/CD processes and so forth. I would just like, I've added all sorts of post-its as well on the side note thing. I just wanted to highlight as well automation for validators. So if we're building validation artifacts, if we're defining validation artifacts like shackle shapes, XML schemas, table schemas, whatever it is, we've only had good experiences in the past by also automatically publishing, let's say, work in progress validators that are shared between the different experts working on a data specification, on a semantic specification. Because through validators, you can actually then see if everything that you're putting together in the specs and in the shapes, for example, if they indeed match what you expect. So yeah, just chiming in to say that, and I've added everything as well on the board. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Kostas. Someone else has comments to any items on the table?
Yeah, on the left part, I've tried to sum or let's say group the similar notes. So I see also a lot of input on the right on the second exercise where there's an area to provide other feedback on the SEMIC approach, so more of a general discussion. So there some things we have already talked about, like the tagged values used. On the left, there's two post-its talking about UML as a input format, let's say, which was also already discussed in the style guide webinar, if I'm not mistaken. So if anybody else has any comments there, you can also add post-its there, or yeah. And then there is another comment on the Oslo framework and the similarities there, on the bottom left. Do you want to, the author of this post-it, comment on this further, or shall we just take it into potential next events or in the manual?
We have 15 minutes. If we save say 5-10 minutes for wrap up and maybe we can take one post-it and answer.
Yeah.
I'm curious about that. I wrote the Oslo framework difference question.
Okay, that's should be pretty easy to answer. Clarify the difference to the Oslo framework.
They run on the same backbone, Matthias. So what is the difference is two elements. One is styling, what you get out of it. That's number one. And the second thing is the fact that the Oslo framework has been designed with the assumption that you immediately publish the end result of it. So it is a static website you get as output, and you immediately can render it. Whereas in here for SEMIC, because of the publication on GitHub to GitHub.io and the splitting in the different spaces, we have to do an additional manual step into it. So we have to collect the outputs and bring it together. So that's the difference in the main difference between the two.
Thanks.
And then maybe another interesting discussion is on the validators. So there's two comments there. One saying that the use of validators would be good to validate shackle shapes when they are being developed. Another longer comment there by the interoperability testbed team as well.
That's what Kostas just mentioned before. On that level, I think it's good to bind, but we have to be careful here at the level of what is expectation of to be validation. So if you publish a very high level vocabulary, now take the extreme of DC terms, where this outside our domain, but if even can take core person, there's not a lot to validate. The real validation is inside when you're going to use an application profile, etc. So the validation level and criterion that you can get over there is to be subject to what the objective is of that data specification that you have to take into account. This holds for all the outputs and the adoption that you want to get out of it. You have to see what you want and what you want to get out of it. And secondly, and this is something then becomes when you go to real validation into a real life system, then you may add additional background knowledge that you know because of the actual exchange of data, which is more specific knowledge than you have in a generic data specification. So all these aspects make that validation sometimes is what is you have to define what is the definition of validation, but you can hook it up. So that's no problem on connecting the two and we have in our case a production of a shackle shape. You could validate that, but the, let's say, normative expectations of that, you have to be clarifying what is the expectation in each specification.
Just to clarify, Bert, my comment was mostly from our experience some years ago working with SEN on the invoicing standard, where we had the different syntaxes that were being developed and also different validation artifacts per syntax by different sets of experts, basically. And there, all of this was being fed into Git repositories that was automatically leading to updated validator instances. And not only just validators as online services, but also tools, so command line tools and so forth. And the experts were actually using these then in, let's say, their unit testing processes. So they were actually defining different scenarios and the different validation artifacts to validate them. And they used these validator artifacts that were being produced automatically as, let's say, validation building blocks, as quality assurance building blocks in their own development processes. it was a model that worked quite well. We got some good feedback from it, and I think that it could be interesting for, well, at least to be considered. Let's see if it can
yeah, I think it's good, but then we have the next step in sense of the thing is it potentially is available. We can strengthen it. I think that's an element that we could do and look at it. But it's for the moment that we end up in much more into, let's say, implementation track or closer with the collaboration of the end results. And that's an, let's say, at the level of SEMIC, not so common case. At the level, maybe at the member state, it is maybe a much more common case when you have concrete projects and so on it. But at least currently at SEMIC level, not.
Okay, so we are 10 minutes to the end. Maybe Nathan, can you spend this? We are going to leave the mural active for say 1 week. So Nathan, can you spend a couple of words for the lower part, because now we've been concentrating on the just the upper part, so that the participants and people in the audience, they know they can also put their input there, and for us is equally valuable.
Yep, indeed. But the lower part, so Claudio, I assume you're referring to the steps in the publication process and how other participants see or do this currently. Which indeed, for the people that have seen the survey, this was also something we tried to capture through that medium. And we've got quite a few responses on that one, so thank you for that. In general, yeah, next to the comments that we already had in the survey results, I think Georgia, you replied here how Italy handles the data specification lifecycle. Are there other comments? So you can definitely take some time here to put a sticky note. Are there comments on any steps that you think are more important, less important, some specific requirements that emerge on any of these actions and activities from other participants? So I'll go over the ones from Italy. So the first one, extending existing data models. Yeah, I think that's indeed one of the core activities that is being done. Managing persistent URIs, it's also a bit of a different topic, well, an important topic. Where in Italy, it is currently assuming bigger national importance to have persistent and neutral URIs for PAs. I think there was on top another comment on the URIs, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, if I can complement, we are using w3id.org. We have Italia, which means Italy in English, that we have taken years ago, but now we are pushing administrations to use this for persistent URIs, and we manage URIs, dereferentiation and content negotiation mechanisms through this service. Okay, and we are in touch with w3id.org in order to govern, let me say, also other persistent URIs that other public administration are currently defining for their data models and linked data or something like that.
So Georgia, there is a central unit to which you are delegating this.
Yeah, indeed, there is the Department of the Digital Transformation who is going to lead this work of defining together with the public administration the rules for the directions to every public administration platforms through which the URI dereferentiation happens. Okay. So yes, there is like a management between the department and single public administration in this case, yes.
Very good, very good. So Nathan, I want to make sure that we can properly say goodbye and thanks to the participants, and they don't have to run away. because the 2 hours are have expired. Can you take us to the end?
Yeah, Emil, if you can share the slides again. And as Claudia also said, so we would definitely like to invite you to continue this discussion offline. So we now had a small amount of time to discuss a large topic. So in the coming days and weeks, definitely continue to provide your input if you have any. Either on this mural, there is also the GitHub page that we shared earlier with the manual where you could post issues if you like. So let's definitely take this discussion further. But Claudio, the word is yours for the conclusion.
I want to thank you, all of my colleagues which made this possible, Bert, Media, Nathan, Emil, and especially those who have taken the time of your day to come and participate to this and have given great input. This is a continuous work for us, for SEMIC. I can anticipate again that in June we're going to more practically invite experts around the table. And again, if you want to influence this process, whether you already have a solution or you're seeking for a solution for maintaining data specification, always stay in touch. With that, I will again extend gratitude for the opportunity you give SEMIC, and reciprocally SEMIC brings to you, and wish you a next continuation of your day.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the
Bye-bye.
feedback.